In this video, you will see what is the top 10 must-have units in anime Vanguards update 5.5. Every units in this video are all obtainable. I do want to know, what do you think is the best unit in anime Vanguards update 5.5? Remember to subscribe and like, and with that being said, in no particular order, the first must-have unit is Katakuri Mochi. Katakuri is one of the newest secret unit you can get from the floor 50 of World Lines in this new anime Vanguards update 5.5. Katakuri Mochi stats are max upgrade and max FLR, 33,630 damage with his SP at 10 seconds, making his damage per second at 3,366. Katakuri's first passive, it's getting sticky. Anytime this unit attacks an enemy on hit, slows them by 50% for 3 seconds. If this unit attacks an enemy inflicted with slow, it follows up with attack 6 for minus 50% of his damage. His second passive, Mochi Conqueror, his attacks will cover the track in sticky mochi spots where the attack land for 20 seconds, and any on-hit effects this unit may have gets applied to the enemy for every second they walk across the mochi spot. Only one mochi spot can exist at a time. Once the mochi spot expires, this unit let out his aura, stunning all in range for 2 seconds. His third passive, Mochi Mastery. Whenever this unit attacks a slowed enemy, this unit moves to the nearest applicable location possible based on the end of the attack. When this moving occurs, it decreases SPA by 2% up to 20%. Alright, next unit is Eizen Aura. Eizen is one of the strongest secret, with him being immune to all status ailments, and he will be able to place a wall at later upgrades where he will stop enemies and become full AoE at later upgrades, and he is insanely meta in the latest Sid raid. Eizen Aura stats are max upgrade and max FLR, 52,390 damage with his SP at 10 seconds, making his damage per second at 5,226, which is insanely good, especially he becomes full AoE at later upgrades. Eizen Aura's first passive, Aura. He will be immune to all status ailments. Every enemy within 40% of this unit's range takes a DOT damage, scaling from 1% to 80% of this unit's damage based on how close they are to the unit. His second passive, Complete Hypnosis. Anytime a health stock is removed, forces every enemy on the map to walk backwards for 5 seconds and lessens his SPA by 5% per health stock missing. And his third passive, Dabo Mastery, gains active Dabo 81. Every enemy stopped by Dabo 81 increases the damage conversion of aura by an additional of 2% for the duration of the ability. Sheesh. Okay, next unit is Yuhawwok Almighty. Yuhawwok is one of the best secret with his passives, and he becomes full AoE at later upgrades. Yuhawwok Almighty stats are max upgrade and max Valar, 28,120 damage with his SP at 9.2 seconds, making his damage per second at 3,056, which is great, especially he becomes full AoE at later upgrades. Yuhawwok Almighty has 3 passives. His first passive, the Almighty. The Almighty immune to all status ailments, increasing his damage by 5% for every status ailments avoided up to 30%. His second passive, the Man Who Saw the Future. When this unit attacks, it will do an additional attack on the last enemy in range at the same time. This will only apply if the first and the last enemy are different. His third passive, Ash Fallen, gains an active ability which increases his range by 5% every time Ash Fallen is used up to 20%. When activating the ability, it switches between 2 toggles. Toggle 1 buffs all units in range by 15% and damage, and lose 30% attack from this unit. Although his second toggle will debuff all allied units in his range by 20% damage and 10% range, and gain 10% damage and 5% range per allied unit who is debuffed from this ability. How to get Yuhawwok is from the rift, where he is a 2% chance to get, so good luck to everyone who is grinding for this unit. Alright, next unit is Boo Evil. Boo is one of the best secret with his insane passives and transformation. Boo Evil stats are max upgrade and max FLR, 65,550 damage with his SP at 6.3 seconds, making his damage per second at 10,486, which is insanely meta. Boo Evil passive, the Ultimate Evil, where he will cleanse any status effect applied to this unit and has a 10 seconds cooldown. When this unit attacks an enemy, they turn into a candy for 30 seconds, and every takedown on an enemy counts as a candy. gaining 1 candy stack. His second passive, Transforming Terror. Every transformation terror gives him 15% more damage and 10% more range, which stacks, and selling this unit causes them to refund the summons cap and lose this passive's buff and then transform. His third passive, Produce. For every enemy hit by this unit, attacks increase by 0.1% up to 30%. His fourth passive, Spooky Ghost. Every 10 enemies killed by this unit summons a basic summoner for 70% of this unit's attack stat, making Monarch the best trait on Boo as it scales with his damage. His fifth passive, Intelligence Gained. Buffs all Dragon Ball units in range by 10% attack and 30% crit chance, including Boo. How to get Secret Boo Portal is from any Land of the Gods act to appear at the end of the path upon victory, where there is a 2% chance to drop, so good luck to everyone who is grinding for this unit. And it also apply on the story mode. Okay, next unit is Vogita Angel. Vegeta is one of the transformation from Roku Super 3, and he is one of the strongest with his insane stats at later upgrades. Vegeta's Angel stats at max upgrade at max Valar, 147,780 damage with his SP at 6.4 seconds, making his damage per second at 22,932. Vegeta's first passive, Hope of the Universe. This unit gains a gauge on attack. The gauge fills up by 25%. When this gauge is filled, this unit you can swap to its counterpart. Vegeta's second passive, The Hero Arrives. His damage increases by 50% on entry after a swap in for 40 seconds, and when this unit swaps in, stuns all enemies in its radius for 2 seconds. Vegeta's last passive, The Prince of Pride. Every time this unit attacks, gain 2% more damage up to 40%. This value carries over between swaps and fusion permanently. Alright, next one is Sunjin and agross. Sunjin is still one of the strongest Vanguard with his OP passives and nukes. Sunjin and agross stats at max upgrade at max Valar, 232,630 damage with his SP at 6.4 seconds, making his damage per second at 36,303, which is insanely overpowered. Sunjin and agross have 3 passives. His first passive, The Army Supply. This unit has a mana bar. Anytime this unit summons a unit, will lose 40% of its total mana, and anytime an enemy is defeated, this unit gains 2% of their total mana, and anytime a mana is lost, his damage will be buffed by 0.5% up to 30%. His second passive, The General. Anytime an allied summon dies in this unit's range, increases his damage by 5% up to 50%. This increases is reset after this unit attacks. If none of these unit summons are on the track, this unit will gain 20% more range and 30% more damage. Finally, his last passive, The Monarch. This unit summon gains additional health based on the percentage of mana remaining after their summoning. Between upgrades, Sunjin will be able to nuke enemies with his 3 abilities, although it is only 1 time per use per game, which you will have to use wisely. And between upgrades, Sunjin will be able to summon 4 different summons, which are all insanely overpowered, and you can summon them again and again when they are dead. Wow. Okay, next unit is Saber Black Tyrant. Saber is one of the best secret unit with her early full AoE, and she is immune to stuns and debuffs. Saber Black Tyrant stats at max upgrade and max Valar, 34,350 damage with her SP at 7.2 seconds, making her damage per second at 40,739. Saber's first passive, Aura of Corruption. All enemies within 70% of this unit's range is slowed by 20%, and units that are not corrupted gains minus 15% for all enemies, and units affected gain 5% more damage up to 50%, and she will be immune to stuns and debuffs. Her second passive, Summon Servant. If Sakura unit is placed anywhere, this unit will do an additional attack synced to its SPA timer at 50% damage. Every additional attack increases range by 1% up to 30%. Her third passive, Dark Excalibur. After every 5 attacks, this unit will switch to Dark Excalibur for 1 attack, which increases her SPA by 20%, 100% more damage, and 20% more range, and will inflict burn for 35% of her damage over 6 seconds during Dark Excalibur. Alright, next one is Smith John. Sid is one of the newest unit added in this new anime Vanguards update 5.5, and he became one of the strongest with his passive and nuke ability. Smith John stats a max upgrade and max LR, 24,020 damage with his SP at 4.4 seconds, making his damage per second at 5,422. Smith John's first passive dramatic entry. This unit gains a gauge on attack. The gauge fills by 12.5%. Once this gauge is filled, this unit can then press to unlock an active ability to swap to its counterpart. On entry, damage all enemies in range for 80% of this unit's damage and buffs damage by 40% for 30 seconds. Its second passive, Undercover Agent, gains the unknown element. On attack, if this unit has already attacked that enemy, it increases the damage of the attack by 5% and it stacks, which is insanely meta against bosses. His last passive, A Welcome Challenge. If the enemy has more health than this unit has damage, this unit will deal 40% more damage. At later upgrades, Smith John will get an ability Assassination. When activating, it will deal 600% more damage on the next attack to the highest enemy HP in range and have a global cooldown of 100 seconds. Okay, next unit is Gojo Infinity. Gojo is one of the strongest unit with his passives and ability at later upgrades. Gojo Infinity stats a max upgrade and max LR, 40,050 damage with his SP at 9.8 seconds, making his damage per second at 4,086.73, which is extremely good, especially he becomes a full AoE unit at later upgrades with his overpowered passives. Yeah. Gojo's first passive, Strongest Sorcerer. He will gain 20% damage and lessens his SPA by 10%. His second passive, Limitless. He is immune to any status ailment and his damage will increase by 0.1% with each wave pass. His third passive, Unlimited Expansion. He will gain the ability Void. His SPA will be reduced by 2% for each kill during Void down to 10%. And when Void is activated, Gojo will gain 30% more damage and all enemies in range are frozen for 10 seconds. How to evolve Gojo is from doing the Jujutsu Kaisen Infinite and get fingers from the Sukuna. And he is an RNG boss, and then once you have 20 fingers, you can transfer it for 2 eyes, which you will be needing to evolve your Gojo. Alright, next unit is Vigil Power. Vigil is one of the battle pass unit and he is one of the best unit with his passives. Vigil Power stats a max upgrade and max LR, 21,250 damage with his SP at 7.3 seconds, making his damage per second at 2,921. At upgrade 5, he will get 2 new passive. His first passive, Doppelganger. Vigil gains gauge. Once it fills up, Vigil transform for 30 seconds and gain 50% more damage and 20% more range and gain access to Doppelganger. When this unit attacks, spawns in a clone who repeats the same attack this unit does. His second passive, You Shall Die. When attacking stunned or frozen or time stop enemy, the attack has a 100% chance of immediately following up with the move 1. This attack can be immediately followed by move 1 with each repeating occurrence reducing the chance by 15%. Okay, next unit is Gogetta Super 4. Rohita Super 4 is one of the best Vanguard unit with its insane stats at later upgrades and ability on placement where you can replace him anywhere, which is insanely good for early waves. Rohita Super 4 stats a max upgrade and max LR, 45,360 damage with his SP at 8.3 seconds, making his damage per second at 5,478, which is extremely strong, especially with his ability. On placement, Gogetta will get an ability Instant Teleportation, which you can select any point on the map where this unit will move to, which is insanely meta for early waves. Vogita Super 4 has 3 passives. His first passive is Gotcha. There is a 10% chance for this unit to not attack, and if he does not attack, he instead slow enemies and raises his damage by 5% up to 50%. His second passive, the Monkey King. Anytime this unit attacks, a clone will appear mirroring the last attack this unit made. Finally, his third passive is Instant Teleportation. Anytime this ability is activated, it decreases his SPA by 20% for 20 seconds. How to get Gogetta Super 4 is by summoning on the Winter Banner where he is at 0.0005% to get, and good luck to everyone who is trying to get this unit. Alright, next one is Yamamoto. Captain Yamamoto is one of the strongest summoners with how he frequently summons and will inflict burn to enemies. Yamamoto Captain stats a max upgrade and max civil R, 30,760 damage with this SP at 10.2 seconds, making his damage per second at 3008, which is insanely overpowered, especially he becomes fully weak at later upgrades. Yamamoto Captain's first passive, Head Captain, attacks will inflict burn for 25% damage, and his damage will increase by 10% and lessens his SPA by 2% for every burning enemy in this unit's range up to 30%. His second passive, South, every enemy this unit kills gets revived as a skeleton, with its health being 40% of this unit's attack, making Monarch the best trait as it will scale with traits. His third passive, Release, gains an ability where the enemy that walks into this unit's range will be inflicted with burn every 15 seconds and will increase the damage of the burn applied to the same enemy by this unit by 1% every time it is applied. When activating North, all skeletons summoned on the map will stop moving, and it is a global cooldown. Alright, next unit is Lord of Shadows. Sid is one of the transformation of Sid, and he is one of the strongest secret in this new anime Vanguards update 5.5. Lord of Shadows at max upgrade, max level, and max buff are 57,650 damage with his SP at 7.1 seconds, making his damage per second at 8,133. Lord of Shadows' first passive, Dramatic Entry, this unit gains a gauge. On attack, the gauge fills up by 12.5%. Once gauge is filled, this unit can be pressed the unlockative ability to swap to its counterpart. On entry, damages all enemies in range by 150% of this unit's damage and buffs range by 30% for 30 seconds. His second passive, Lord of the Shadows, whenever this unit gets a takedown on an enemy, gains 0.5% damage up to 100% and more range by 0.25% up to 50%. And this buff are lost on swap. His last passive, Overpower. This unit is immune to debuffs, increases his damage dealt to the enemy based on the percentage of their missing HP. Lord of Shadows at later upgrades gets an ability, All Range Atomic. When activating, it will deal 50% times of the amount of swaps this unit has done in damage to all enemies in range, which resets on use, and this has a global cooldown of 180 seconds. Okay, next unit is Roku Super 3. Goku is one of the strongest with his passive and stats at later upgrades in this new anime Vanguards update 5.5. Roku Super 3 stats a max upgrade and max civil R, 105,560 damage with his SP at 6.4 seconds, making his damage per second at 16,380. Goku's first passive, Hope of the Universe, this unit gains a gauge. On attack, the gauge fills up by 25%, and when this gauge is filled, this unit can swap to its counterpart. The second passive, The Hero Arrives, his damage increases by 50% on entry after swap in for 40 seconds. When this unit swaps in, it stuns all enemies in its range for 2 seconds. His last passive, Here It Comes, if no enemy is in range, this unit starts gaining damage and range at a rate of 1% per second up to 100%. Once this unit attacks, this value resets to 0. Finally, the last unit is Super Vegito. Vegito is one of the most overpowered unit with his passive and stats at later upgrade. Super Vegito stats at max upgrade and max civil R, 234,570 damage with his SP at 3.9 seconds, making his damage per second at 60,668, which is insanely overpowered. Vegito's first passive, The Strongest Fusion, on entry gains 100% more damage for 40 seconds, and once 40 seconds have elapsed, gain 20% more damage, decreases his SPA by 20% and increases his range by 20%, and attack ignores enemy dodge chance. His second passive, Alright, if an enemy would attack an ally, it attacks this unit instead. Anytime this unit is attacked, increases his range by 3% up to 30%. Its attacks also inflict Rupture, which permanently removes regen, which makes him great against regen enemies. His third passive, Enough, attacks will ignore 50% of enemy damage reduction. Anytime an enemy attacks or applies the status effect on this unit, he will perform a counter attack on that enemy. That was everything for this video on the top 10 must-have units in Anime Vanguards Update 5.5. I hope this video helped you in some sort of way. Remember to subscribe and like, and I will see you in my next one. Bye bye.